First contact in the medical bay. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the galactic medical vessel Asclepius, watching the stars streak by in the familiar patterns of FTL travel. As the first human doctor assigned to the prestigious alien hospital ship, she'd grown accustomed to the sideways glances and whispered conversations that followed her through the corridors. The Relaxians, with their crystalline exoskeletons, found the soft squishiness of human flesh disturbing. The Morrigan, who could regrow entire limbs, couldn't fathom how humans survived with such limited regenerative capabilities. Today marked her third month aboard, and she was finally starting to feel like she belonged. At least, until the emergency alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Code red in Bay 3. Multiple casualties incoming from mining accident. All medical personnel report immediately. The ship's AI announced in 15 different languages. Sarah sprinted toward the emergency bay, her boots echoing against the metallic floor. She arrived to find organized chaos. Medical teams of various species preparing for the incoming wounded. Chief Medical Officer Scuttle, their 8-limbed arachnidian superior, was already delegating tasks. Dr. Chen, take Bay 5. We have 3 Centaurians coming in with severe trauma. Their crystalline matrix is. Skull paused, mandibles clicking in concern. Perhaps you should take the Terran patient instead. Their biology might be more familiar to you. With respect, sir, I've studied Centaurian physiology extensively. Their crystalline matrix isn't that different from human bone structure, just more pronounced. I can handle it. The look of surprise in Skittle's compound eyes was almost worth the implied insult. Before he could respond, the emergency doors hissed open, and the casualties started pouring in. The Centaurians were in bad shape. Their usually translucent bodies were clouded with stress fractures, and one had a complete break in their lower extremity. To most alien species, this kind of damage would be catastrophic. Their bodies weren't designed to handle structural failures. Sarah got to work immediately, surprising her alien assistants with her decisive actions. Get me the molecular bonding agent and the percussion stabilizer, she ordered, already applying emergency patches to the worst breaks. Dr. Chen, one of her Relaxian nurses, chittered nervously. Their pain levels are critical. Should we not wait for? Pain is temporary. Death is permanent, Sarah replied, a saying from her emergency medicine rotation on Earth that had always stuck with her. They're in shock, which means we have minutes, not hours. Hand me that stabilizer. The next 40 minutes were intense. Sarah worked with precision that belied her species' reputation for clumsiness, her hands steady as she repaired microscopic fractures and reinforced weakened segments. She hummed softly as she worked, an old habit that drew curious looks from her colleagues, but seemed to calm her patients. When Chief Medical Officer Scuttle came to check on her progress, he found all 3 Centaurians stabilized, their matrices already beginning to heal along the reinforced pathways Sarah had created. This is unexpected, Scuttle admitted, examining her work. How did you know to align the molecular bonds in this pattern? Our standard procedure calls for complete immobilization until natural reformation occurs. Sarah smiled, wiping sweat from her forehead. Humans have been dealing with broken bones since we first walked upright. We learned that sometimes you have to break something a little more to help it heal properly. Besides, she added, your standard procedure was written by species who've never had to heal from structural damage. We humans do it all the time. The revelation seemed to shock her superior. You mean to tell me that humans regularly survive and heal from matrix, from skeletal damage? Oh yes, I broke my arm twice as a kid. Rock climbing, she added, noting his confused expression. It's a human recreational activity where we deliberately climb up dangerous surfaces for fun. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of medical equipment and the crystalline chiming of healing Centaurians. Finally, Scuttle spoke, his voice carrying a new note of respect. Perhaps we have underestimated your species' resilience, Dr. Chen. I would be interested in learning more about human medical techniques. It seems there are aspects of healing we may have overlooked in our focus on prevention and regeneration. Sarah's smile widened. I'd be happy to teach you, sir. Though I should warn you, some of our methods might seem a bit primitive by your standards. After today's demonstration, Doctor, I believe primitive may not be the correct term. Battle-tested might be more appropriate. As Sarah began explaining the basics of human emergency medicine to her increasingly fascinated superior, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Sometimes the most sophisticated solution wasn't the most elegant one. Sometimes it was the one that had been refined by millions of years of evolution and countless broken bones. In the beds behind them, the Centaurians' crystalline bodies chimed softly as they healed, their matrices rebuilding themselves along the paths she had created. It was a sound that reminded her of wind chimes on Earth, and for the first time since joining the Asclepius, Sarah felt truly at home among the stars. The breaking point. The emergency alert came during ship's night cycle, jerking Dr. Sarah Chen from a fitful sleep. This time, it wasn't the usual medical emergency signal. It was the deep, resonating tone that indicated a ship-wide crisis. All medical personnel to emergency stations. Containment breach in engineering section Delta. Multiple casualties expected. This is not a drill. Sarah was moving before the announcement finished, medical kit already in hand. The corridors of the Asclepius thrummed with an unfamiliar vibration that made her teeth ache. Whatever had happened in engineering, it was bad. She arrived at the Emergency Response Center to find Chief Medical Officer Scuttle already organizing teams. His normally iridescent exoskeleton had taken on the dull gray coloring that indicated extreme stress. Dr. Chen, we have a situation. A quantum containment field has failed in one of the experimental medical labs. The radiation. He paused, mandibles clicking rapidly. It's a type we've never encountered before. It's affecting different species in different ways. Sarah felt her stomach drop. How many exposed? 17. Multiple species. The Relaxians are showing signs of crystal decay. The Morgans can't regenerate. And the humans, Skittle's compound eyes fixed on her. The two human engineers who were present are still conscious and mobile, but their readings are concerning. Take me to them. The emergency ward was chaos. Beings of various species lay on beds, their bodies reacting in ways their physiology was never designed to handle. Sarah's attention immediately focused on the two humans, Engineering Chief Rodriguez and his assistant Zhang. They were sitting up, which was both good and terrible news. Good because they were conscious. Terrible because they should have been in too much pain to move. Chief Rodriguez, Sarah called out, rushing to his side. Status report. The engineer's face was pale, but he managed a weak smile. Doc, remember when you said humans were too stubborn to die? Might need to test that theory. Sarah's diagnostic scanner revealed the horror their bodies were hiding. The radiation was systematically breaking down their cellular structure. By all medical science, they should have been in excruciating pain, possibly comatose. Instead, they were alert and trying to help the medical team understand what had happened. How are you even conscious? Dr. Terese, a Morrigan healer, asked in amazement. Your pain readings are off our scales. Pain's just data, Rodriguez grunted, a line he'd obviously picked up from Sarah. And right now, we need our brains working to figure this out. Sarah made a quick decision. Skittle, I need your permission to try something unorthodox. It's a human medical technique we developed for radiation exposure. It's experimental, and by your standards, probably barbaric. The chief medical officer's exoskeleton shifted colors rapidly, their equivalent of rapid thought. Your species has survived radiation exposure before. We've been dealing with radiation since we split the atom. We've learned a few tricks. Some of them aren't pretty, but they work. Proceed. Sarah began barking orders, requesting supplies that made her alien colleagues' appendages twitch in dismay. Cellular stabilizers, synthetic blood replacements, and chemicals that would be considered toxic by most species standards. She was essentially planning to poison her patients to save them. "This is going to hurt," she warned Rodriguez and Zhang, "but it'll keep you alive long enough for your bodies to adapt." Zhang actually laughed, though it came out as more of a cough. "Doc, everything already hurts. Just do what you need to do." As Sarah began the treatment, she explained the process to her fascinated and horrified colleagues. Human bodies are remarkably adaptable. We can survive things that would kill most species because we've been surviving them for our entire evolutionary history. Radiation, poison, trauma. We've developed mechanisms to endure them all. "But the pain," Caress protested. "Is terrible," Sarah agreed, injecting another dose of stabilizer into Rodriguez's arm. "But humans can compartmentalize pain, push it aside when we need to. It's not always healthy, but it's kept us alive through countless disasters." Hours passed in a blur of treatment and monitoring. Sarah worked without rest, her own body pushing through exhaustion in a display of the very endurance she was describing. Gradually, impossibly, the readings began to stabilize. The human engineer's cellular decay slowed, then stopped, then began to reverse. When Skeetle finally ordered her to rest, Sarah found herself surrounded by a group of alien medical students, all eager to understand how humans could endure what they'd just witnessed. "It's not that we're stronger," she explained, accepting a cup of stimulant from a grateful nurse. "We're just experienced at being broken, at hurting, at healing." Every human carries the genetic memory of countless ancestors who survived things that should have killed them. We're the descendants of the ones who lived through plagues, famines, wars, and disasters. We learn to endure, to adapt, to keep fighting even when our bodies are telling us to stop. She looked over at Rodriguez and Zhang, now sleeping peacefully as their bodies began the long process of healing. "That's the real secret of human medicine. We don't just treat the body. We work with it, challenge it, sometimes even fight it, because we know that deep down, the human body is a battlefield where survival has been winning for millions of years." The silence that followed was profound. Finally, one of the students spoke up. "Is that why you hum when you work? To remind yourself of the battle?" Sarah smiled, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "No, that's to remind myself of the victory. Pain is just data." The lecture hall aboard the Asclepius was packed beyond capacity. Word had spread quickly through the galactic medical community about the unprecedented radiation incident, and now Dr. Sarah Chen found herself facing an audience of alien medical professionals eager to understand human resilience. "The human nervous system," Sarah began, bringing up a holographic display of neural pathways, "is both more complex and more primitive than most spacefaring species. We experience pain more intensely than many of you, but we've also developed remarkable mechanisms to cope with it." In the front row, Chief Rodriguez sat as a living example, his body still healing from radiation exposure that should have been fatal. Next to him, Chief Medical Officer Skittle's exoskeleton shimmered with scholarly interest. "What you're about to see may disturb some of you," Sarah warned, pulling up medical records from Earth's history. "These are cases of humans surviving extreme trauma through what we call mind over matter, the ability to override our body's pain responses." The images drew collective gasps and murmurs from the audience. Humans completing marathons with broken bones, mothers lifting vehicles to save trapped children, survivors lasting days under collapsed buildings. "But how is this possible?" a Morrigan doctor interrupted. "Your species lacks redundant organs, regenerative abilities, or even basic exoskeletal protection. By all logic, such trauma should trigger immediate system shutdown." Sarah smiled. "Logic doesn't always apply to human survival. We've evolved something perhaps more valuable than physical redundancy, psychological adaptability. Our bodies don't just fight to survive. They learn from every injury, every illness, every near-death experience." She brought up new data, showing human cellular responses to various types of damage. "Take our bone healing process. When a human bone breaks, it often heals stronger at the break point. We don't just recover, we improve. A Relaxian student raised a crystalline appendage. But the pain readings from Chief Rodriguez during the radiation crisis, they exceeded our measurement capabilities. How did he remain functional? Pain is just data. Rodriguez spoke up from his seat, using the phrase that had become something of a mantra aboard the ship. It's information your body sends to your brain. And like any data, humans can choose how to process it. Sarah nodded. This is what I want to focus on today. Human pain management isn't just about blocking pain signals. It's about understanding them, working with them, and sometimes pushing through them. She proceeded to demonstrate various human medical techniques, from ancient practices like acupuncture to modern neural feedback systems. The alien doctors watched in fascination as she explained how humans had turned their very vulnerability into a strength. Our susceptibility to pain has forced us to become experts at healing, she continued. We've developed countless methods to repair damage, fight infection, and promote recovery. Some of these methods might seem primitive to you, but they're tested by millions of years of evolution. Dr. Caress, who had assisted during the radiation crisis, added her own observations. I've been studying human medical records since the incident. Their healing methods often seem counterintuitive, deliberately causing controlled damage to promote stronger healing, using poisons in carefully measured doses as medicine, even surgically removing and replacing damaged parts. Exactly, Sarah agreed. We've learned to use everything at our disposal, including things that could kill us, because sometimes the path to healing requires walking a dangerous line. The lecture continued for hours, with Sarah and Rodriguez answering countless questions about human medical practices. Some of the concepts were met with disbelief, others with a kind of horrified fascination. But underneath it all was a growing respect for humanity's approach to survival. As the session wound down, a young Centaurian student asked the question that had been hovering unspoken in the room. Dr. Chen, given humanity's unique approach to pain and healing, do you think there are medical techniques we could learn from your species, despite our biological differences? Sarah exchanged a glance with Skittle before answering. I believe there's always something to learn from different approaches to healing. The radiation incident proved that. While our methods might seem crude to advanced species, they're built on an intimate understanding of what it means to be hurt, to heal, and to survive. She brought up one final image, a simple DNA helix. This is human DNA. Within it is coded not just our physical structure, but the survival stories of countless ancestors who lived through ice ages, plagues, famines, and disasters. Every human carries this legacy of survival. We're not just adapted to survive harm. We're built to learn from it, to grow stronger from it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Skeetle stepped forward, his exoskeleton glowing with the deep blue of profound realization. Perhaps, he said, mandibles clicking thoughtfully, we have been approaching medical science from too narrow a perspective. We focused on preventing pain, eliminating risk, and engineering perfect biological systems. But humans have embraced their imperfections and turned them into tools for survival. Sarah nodded. That's the paradox of human medicine. Our greatest weakness, our vulnerability to injury and pain, has become one of our greatest strengths. Because we can be hurt, we've learned to heal. Because we feel pain so intensely, we've learned to endure it. And because we're so fragile, we've learned to be incredibly, impossibly tough. As the audience began to disperse, Sarah noticed something had changed in the way her alien colleagues looked at her. Where once there had been concern or pity for her seemingly fragile human form, now there was something else. Respect, curiosity, and perhaps a touch of awe. The healing touch. The Asclepius had changed in the months following the radiation incident. What had started as a curiosity about human medical techniques had evolved into a full-scale research initiative. Dr. Sarah Chen found herself at the center of it all, working with alien colleagues to bridge the gap between advanced galactic medicine and humanity's battle-tested healing methods. The cellular regeneration is accelerating, Dr. Caress reported, her bioluminescent appendages pulsing with excitement as she examined the test results. By combining your species' inflammatory response triggers with our regenerative technology, we're seeing healing rates that should be impossible. Sarah studied the data on the floating holographic display. They had been working for weeks on integrating human healing mechanisms with alien medical technology. What had started as a theoretical exercise had quickly become something revolutionary. It's not just the healing rate, Sarah pointed out, highlighting several markers in the data. Look at the tissue quality. The scarring patterns are more like human healing. Adaptive, reinforced. These cells aren't just regenerating, they're learning. Chief Medical Officer Scuttle moved closer, his compound eyes focusing on the microscopic imagery. Fascinating. We've always viewed scarring as a flaw, an imperfect repair, but you humans use it as a strengthening mechanism. Exactly, Sarah said, pulling up comparative scans. When humans heal, we don't just restore, we reinforce. Every injury becomes a lesson our bodies learn from. We're applying that principle to your regenerative techniques. The medical bay had become a fusion of human and alien approaches. Traditional regeneration chambers now incorporated elements designed to stimulate human-style healing responses. Monitoring systems had been modified to account for the psychological factors that humans had proven were crucial to recovery. A young Relaxian patient floated in one of the modified chambers, their crystalline form showing signs of recent damage. Unlike traditional treatments that would have simply regenerated the damaged sections, this new approach was allowing the crystal structure to heal in a way that made it more resistant to future trauma. Patients' stress responses are elevated, one of the alien nurses reported, but within expected parameters based on the human model. Sarah nodded. Good. Some stress is necessary for proper healing. The body needs to know it's in danger to activate its full repair capabilities. She turned to the patient's family members, who were watching nervously. Your child's body isn't just healing, it's getting stronger. The concept had been difficult for many alien species to accept at first. The idea of allowing, even encouraging, a certain level of pain and stress during healing seemed barbaric to societies that had evolved beyond such concerns. But the results were undeniable. Dr. Chen, a voice called from across the medical bay. The Centaurian researcher was waving her over to another station. You need to see this. The display showed the results of their latest experiment, combining human-style cellular adaptation with Centaurian crystal matrix regeneration. The implications were staggering. The matrices are developing microfracture patterns, Sarah observed, like the stress lines in human bones. Yes, the researcher confirmed, their crystalline form vibrating with excitement. And when we test the strength of the healed sections, they're showing a 40% increase in resistance to similar types of damage. Skeetel's exoskeleton shifted to a deep purple, a sign of profound revelation. We've been so focused on perfect restoration that we never considered the benefits of adaptive healing. Humans don't just survive damage. They learn from it on a cellular level. Sarah smiled, remembering her early days aboard the ship when her human vulnerability had been seen as a liability. That's because we never had the luxury of perfect healing. We had to make do with what we had. And what we had was the ability to adapt. The medical bay's main doors hissed open, admitting Chief Rodriguez. His recovery had become something of a legend aboard the ship, and he had volunteered to help with their ongoing research. How's the next generation of hybrid healing coming along, Doc? He asked, glancing at the various experiments in progress. Better than we could have hoped, Sarah replied. We're finding ways to combine the best of both approaches, the precision and efficiency of alien regeneration with the adaptability and reinforcement of human healing. Rodriguez nodded, absently rubbing the arm that had been most affected by the radiation. Turns out being a little bit broken isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's how you get stronger. The statement seemed to resonate with the alien medical staff. Sarah watched as her colleagues continued their work, noting how seamlessly they now moved between human and alien medical protocols. The integration wasn't just happening in their research, it was happening in their understanding of what it meant to heal. You know, Therese observed, her bioluminescence creating patterns that Sarah had learned to recognize as thoughtful. Perhaps this is why humans were meant to join the galactic medical community, not despite your vulnerabilities, but because of them. Sarah watched as another patient was prepared for treatment in one of their hybrid healing chambers. Maybe that's true of all medicine, she replied. It's not about being invulnerable. It's about learning from our weaknesses, adapting to our challenges, and finding strength in the way we heal. Around them, the Asclepius hummed with the energy of discovery, its medical bay now a testament to what could be achieved when different approaches to healing were allowed to complement each other. The future of medicine was being rewritten, one healing scar at a time. Evolution's gift. The distress call reached the Asclepius in the early hours of ship's morning. A research vessel, the Quantum Horizon, had suffered a catastrophic accident while testing an experimental FTL drive. The ship's unique crystal matrix core had fractured, sending quantum-charged shards through multiple decks. The casualties were unprecedented, multiple species, multiple types of injuries, all complicated by quantum radiation. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the Emergency Command Center, studying the incoming data with Chief Medical Officer Skittle and Dr. Therese. The situation was worse than anything they'd faced before. The quantum radiation is affecting different species in different ways, Therese reported, her bioluminescence flickering with concern. The Relaxians are experiencing crystalline degradation. The Morgans can't maintain cellular cohesion. The human crew members. She paused, mandibles clicking nervously. Let me guess, Sarah said grimly. They're still conscious and trying to help others despite their injuries. Affirmative. Their vital signs are critical, but they refuse to stop working. Skittle's exoskeleton shifted through several colors before settling on a deep, determined blue. Perhaps this is what all our research has been preparing us for. Dr. Chen, what do you recommend? Sarah took a deep breath, mind racing through everything they'd learned about combining human and alien medical techniques. We need to implement all our hybrid protocols at once, but more than that, we need to adapt them in real time. Every species is going to react differently to this quantum radiation. The Asclepius docked with the damaged vessel 30 minutes later. The scene that greeted them was chaos, but an organized one. Human crew members, despite their injuries, had established trade zones based on species-specific reactions to the radiation. They were bleeding, burning with fever, yet still moving with determined precision. How are they still functioning? A young Centaurian medical student whispered, watching the human engineer patch a hull breach while clearly suffering from severe radiation exposure. Because they have to, Sarah replied, already moving to implement their emergency protocols. Humans don't always have the luxury of waiting for proper medical attention. We've learned to keep going, to push through when survival depends on it. The next 12 hours became a masterclass in everything the Asclepius had learned about combining human and alien medicine. Sarah worked alongside her alien colleagues, implementing treatments that would have seemed impossible months ago. For the Relaxians, they used modified human cellular repair mechanisms to stabilize their crystal matrices. The Morgans received treatments based on human scar formation principles, helping their bodies maintain cohesion long enough for their natural regeneration to adapt. Even the quantum-charged crystal shards, deadly to most species, were repurposed using principles learned from human bone grafting techniques. The human crew members are the most critical now, Therese reported, hours into the crisis. They pushed themselves far beyond safe limits. Sarah looked at the readings and felt her heart sink. The human crew of the Quantum Horizon had kept working long past the point where their bodies should have shut down. They'd saved many lives, but at a terrible cost to themselves. Then it's time to show them what we've learned about human endurance, Sarah said, turning to Skittle. Remember how you once thought humans were fragile? Let's prove just how wrong that was. They implemented their most advanced hybrid healing protocols, treatments that combine the precision of alien regenerative technology with the adaptive resilience of human healing. The quantum radiation had damaged human tissue in ways they'd never seen before, but that was exactly what human bodies were best at handling: novel threats that required evolutionary adaptation. Their cellular structure is actually adapting to the quantum radiation, one of the alien researchers reported in amazement. The damage isn't just being repaired, their bodies are learning to resist it. Sarah smiled despite her exhaustion. That's humanity's gift from evolution. We don't just survive, we adapt. Every threat we face becomes part of our arsenal for facing the next one. As the crisis finally began to stabilize, the medical bay of the Asclepius had become a living testament to the power of combining different approaches to healing. Humans lay in modified regeneration chambers that worked with their body's natural adaptive responses. Aliens received treatments that incorporated human-style resilience training. The distinction between advanced and primitive medicine had blurred into something entirely new. Chief Medical Officer Scuttle found Sarah in her office later, after the last patient had been stabilized. His exoskeleton was displaying colors she'd never seen before. "When you first came aboard the Asclepius," he said, "we thought we were doing your species a favor, teaching you proper medical techniques to compensate for your biological limitations." He paused, mandibles moving in what Sarah now recognized as embarrassment. "We were wrong." "Not wrong," Sarah corrected, checking the latest patient data on her tablet. "Just incomplete. Your medicine is incredible. Precise, efficient, advanced in ways humans can barely comprehend. But there's something to be said for the messy, imperfect way humans heal. Sometimes the strongest repairs come from the hardest breaks." The Asclepius continued its mission, but it was forever changed. The ship that had once been the pinnacle of advanced alien medicine had become something more, a place where the sophisticated precision of galactic medical science merged with the battle-tested resilience of human healing. And in medical facilities across the galaxy, doctors of all species began to understand that true healing wasn't about achieving perfection. It was about adaptation, resilience, and the strength that comes from learning to overcome your own vulnerabilities. It was a lesson humanity had learned through millions of years of evolution, and now it was changing medicine throughout the stars. The human body, it turned out, wasn't a flawed design in need of improvement. It was a testament to the power of turning weakness into strength, of finding victory in survival itself. And that, perhaps, was the greatest medical breakthrough of all.